Have you ever gotten stuck in your writing? Maybe you have run out of ideas as to what your character should be like, or you're stuck at a certain plot point, or you don't really know how exactly your book should start or how it should finish. You need a radical tool that will help you to break through those blocks. And I've got a radical tool for you. Brainstorming. What is it? Brainstorming is when you kind of throw out a bunch of ideas, you write them all down, and it makes your brain work in a different way. You're firing kind of freely in all directions. You're not really going to abandon any idea right off the bat. And so you can come up with something a lot more original than your constricted, structured brain would allow you to do. I know that every single one of you has heard about brainstorming in some capacity, but very few of you actually know how it's done. You don't know how to harness the power of brainstorming to improve your novel. So today, that is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about why to brainstorm, what to brainstorm on, and how to brainstorm, whether you're doing it in a group or solo. It really does help if you do this with a group. So I have a writing group in Marin, and we brainstormed today, and it was really, really helpful to the writers. We figured out some great details that are completely going to transform the beginning of their book for one of them, the ending for another one, and the details of a character for yet a third author in my group. What if you don't have a writing group? Many of you don't necessarily want to have one. I encourage you to join a writing group because I think it's a great, great tool, both in terms of information and motivation. But if you don't want to do that, it is possible to put together a brainstorming group. It's a lot easier to brainstorm as a group. And if you absolutely can't do that, don't you worry, because I have solo brainstorming tools for you that are going to come up towards the end of the video, so stay tuned. Here's how you think of putting together a brainstorming group. If you're meeting with the same people each time, the benefit is that you have that familiarity. So you start to trust people, you start to know what they're about and all that good stuff. However, maybe if you're brainstorming, you do want the novelty. You want somebody to come up with a truly original idea. So you want them to be coming at your book with fresh eyes. How do you choose a brainstorming group? You need to be really, really picky about this because it is of capital importance. You want people in your brainstorming group, just as in a writing group, you want them to be supportive, you want them to have a great imagination, you want them to be not afraid to speak up, but also polite enough to listen to others and let others have the floor once in a while. You want a group that is focused on being productive, and often is going to be a trade-off. So if you have a brainstorming group, you're going to brainstorm on your book for a minute and then maybe on their book, other members' books for some more time in the meeting or during another meeting. It does really help if you brainstorm with other writers. If you don't have a ton of other writers available, really great readers are going to make good brainstormers because they have that critical aspect to them that they read and they are, kind of dissecting what they read. As long as they can identify what makes good writing, they can probably make a good brainstormer. People often ask me like, hey, why can't I just brainstorm with a family member or a friend who's not necessarily a writer or a creative? That's a little bit of a problem. A lot of your spouses or your friends are going to jump at the opportunity to brainstorm. However, if they're not a writer and if they're not kind of a professional in that storytelling space, I think that they might waste your time by throwing out a bunch of ideas or shooting down some of your ideas just to try to protect you from writing something bad. There's a lot of ego going on and there's a lot of projection that happens, and you might want to nip that in the bud. So it's better to brainstorm with an experienced brainstormer if possible. You just want to make sure that your brainstormers understand the way a story is crafted. If you're going to be brainstorming with a group of people who are not necessarily professionals, you might want to remind them of what makes a good story. My video about the storytelling formula that Pixar has elaborated is actually a great place to start for somebody who doesn't quite know what good storytelling is. That might get them a little bit on board and caught up with what it is. You'll also want to subscribe to my channel because I have great videos coming out each and every week to help you out in short bite-sized chunks so that you can learn everything you need to learn and then get right back to writing. Okay, so you've found your brainstorming group. Shouldn't be too many people, shouldn't be too few. I'm thinking like maybe 3 people to 5 people max. What do you do before your brainstorming session to ensure that your brainstorming is going to be productive? First of all, you should figure out what exactly it is that you want to be brainstorming about. It's good to put in some parameters. So if you want to brainstorm about a character, it's great to let your brainstorming group know so that they don't start brainstorming about everything else that's peripheral to that, hence wasting your time. So let them know exactly what you want to be brainstorming about and resist the urge to brainstorm about absolutely everything because it's not going to be as productive. Also, before you meet with your brainstorming group, you're going to want to outline what you know about the story already so that they can be caught up and that you can also be very clear on what you know and what you don't know and that you can see what's working and what's not working. And you're going to want to communicate all of that to your group if possible before you meet. So you might want to send them an email with a recap of what your story's about, how the chapters break down in general, what the characters are, the setting is, maybe just a little synopsis or something, and then let them know what's problematic and what you're going to want to know about. Okay, now, so what do you do during the brainstorming session to ensure that it is positive, productive, and helpful? Number one, you need to reiterate exactly what it is that you're trying to achieve during this brainstorming session. It's not enough that maybe you let them know in an email. You do need to remind them what the goal is. You can invite the people in your group to ask you questions about anything that they're not clear on before you start the session. This is actually kind of an interesting thing. Sometimes they'll ask questions that you don't know the answer to, and that's something that you should definitely write down because that's something that you might need to explore later, maybe in a future brainstorming session. But all of those questions are something that readers want to know, and hence you should probably know the response to as the writer. Here's another thing. When you're in the brainstorming session, make sure that you are absolutely open to all suggestions that are on topic. So don't automatically discount something because it's crazy, or don't automatically discount something because it's not what you were thinking you were going to write. Sometimes the best ideas come from those out of left field kind of wacky ideas that you can build on. So instead of saying yes, but no, rather say yes and try to build on other people's ideas that they've had during the brainstorming session. You could almost score yourself an extra point if you're able to build on something that another member of your group has thrown out there. That's a really great way of being collaborative and cooperative. Definitely take notes during the session because guess what? You will forget some of the best stuff that you guys brainstormed about. So I would really recommend either you taking notes or someone else taking notes, but I prefer to take notes and even record the session if it's helpful because that way you won't miss a single idea. Don't forget, in a brainstorming session, not only be a good recipient of the brainstorming and of the ideas, but if you're in a group, you might be expected to be brainstorming for somebody else. And in that case, make sure that you would brainstorm for others as you would have them brainstorm for you. Most importantly, have fun. Having fun is key. This is what it's all about. It is super fun and exciting to see a story come together and to come up with those great ideas. It's a really, really great thing to do with other writers. And I just find that it's a true bonding experience. And my writing group loves doing this. And then later on, when you see your ideas come to fruition in a later draft of your friend's book, it feels really, really nice to know that you had a part in that. Okay, so I mentioned that brainstorming as part of a group is a really, really good thing. But what if you're stuck brainstorming solo because you're desperate and you really need to move forward? I get it. It happens all the time. Writing is a very solitary pursuit much of the time, and we can't always gather that group that we want or need right there and then. One thing that I would warn you against is posting your question on one of these message boards on Facebook. And I have said that it can help to join one of these groups, join one of these communities, but I feel that so many of them are unfocused, and I feel that some people are true trolls and that they tend to make really mean comments and comments that are not super helpful. And so these authors that are really looking for help and support end up getting the opposite of that. Spare yourself. So what if you're alone, you need to brainstorm right now, you have some major issues? I use a technique that employs questions to help you brainstorm. Write 20 questions that a reader might have about your book, 20 questions that maybe you have about your book. Just write them all down on index cards. Put those index cards on a table or on the floor, because you can't address all of those questions at once. So you're gonna need to choose one, and it's better if it's random, trust me. Here are some examples of questions that you might have. One of them is, what's the basic premise? What is the book about? You know, this is going to really help you to blurt out some things that are going to help you to write a synopsis, for example, or help you with your elevator pitch. Then how about asking what the theme of your book is? The theme is really big. It's going to help you to come up with the conflict, come up with this whole guiding light that's going to make your book and the plot super logical and move forward in a really harmonious way. How about the style or the tone of your book? Have you wondered what kind of genre you're supposed to do, or whether your book should be a thriller or more literary fiction or romance? You might want to brainstorm about how to do that and what the advantages of each would be. Now, you can also look at who is your protagonist? What are their character traits? I go on Pinterest and I will pin pictures of models who look like what my protagonist, my antagonist, my side characters might look like, and also maybe who their friends are, what kind of car they drive, what kind of food they like, and what kind of clothes they would wear. So I'll get this little visual board of what they're like. But of course, you're going to want to write those descriptions down as well, and that's where brainstorming comes in. And of course, I mentioned the beginning and the ending and the climax. These are all little parts of your book that you might want to brainstorm on, but kind of randomly select that so that you don't dread picking that card up. You can force yourself and trick yourself into brainstorming difficult subjects. After all, brainstorming is for making a breakthrough on something that you're having a difficulty with. So my homework for you guys would be, even if you haven't gotten to the point where you're ready to brainstorm, why don't you try to pose a couple questions that would be really good material for a brainstorming session? And you can post those questions down below. That would be awesome. Okay, you guys, that is all I have to say about brainstorming. I hope it really helped. Comment down below if you brainstormed and if it helped you to back your way out of a corner that you had written yourself into. Happy writing. I will see you next time.